Hello, folks. Dustin Zarni here, and welcome to Commissioner in a Car. Today is Monday, March 10th, and this is the March village election edition of Commissioner in a Car. First up, some programming notes. You may have seen, if you follow this on my audio feed, Spotify or one of the other podcast feeds, you may notice that the Zoom with Zarni title has been officially changed to Commissioner in a Car. And if it's not there right now, it will be in the next week. And the reason for that is I've really kind of decided that the Zoom with Zarni podcast that I was doing, and that really started during the pandemic of 2020 and kind of ended middle last year, where I did an interview with another guest. I'm really not going to do those anymore. I have been really making a lot of decisions about how my time is spent and what I wanted to do. And those Zoom with Zarni interviews were really kind of a result of the pandemic. And I was trying to do live town halls because there were no town halls, and I wanted to give that service to the voters during the pandemic. And the town halls ended up fading into an interview session because, we had a lot of people that were crashing town halls and sometimes even with more lewd things than I wanted. It wasn't really very productive. So then I moved to an interview style to keep it up, but really I've decided that was not something that I wanted to continue. You may have noticed during the middle of last year I kind of stopped doing those, and I really haven't done any of those in about 9 months now. And the only reason for that is really me. I've decided that that's not something that I want to devote my time to. I want to devote my time to the two things that I like the most, which is the Commissioner in a Car, which is, the first thing I started doing, and the weekly walk. So once a week I'll be doing this podcast / videocast, Commissioner in a Car. It's all on election information, what's going on in the election world that week. And maybe I'll have a guest in the car with me at some point, but really, this is what I'm going to do. And then I'll be doing my weekly walk dropping on either a Thursday or a Friday, probably Fridays going forward. So Monday's Commissioner in the Car, Friday's weekly walk, and I'm pretty committed to that now, at least for this year. I want to see how it works out. I think that makes my time better spent, and I think it's what most of the people seem to respond to. Those are the two things that are more popular on my meager following. So no more Zoom with Zarni's. Those episodes are still going to be available on my website, on my YouTube channel, on the audio feed. But I'm going to be focusing on the Commissioner in the Car for my video content and the weekly walks. I haven't decided on the Sunday seminars, though, or the Zarni seminars, as I ended up calling them at one point. My guess is those are going to kind of go by the wayside, and I'm going to handle that in the Commissioner in a Car thing. So that is what I'm going to be doing going forward, in case you cared. And I think a lot of people probably don't. That's okay. But this is, in many ways, this is kind of a function for me, as much as you, telling you what I'm doing, because I'm kind of thinking out loud. I've been thinking about it, and I'm pot committed now. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of 2025. And so 2 pieces of content a week. Monday's Commissioner in a Car, Friday's weekly walk, and no more Zoom with Zarni's or Zarni seminars for the time being. That being said, if something really piqued my interest and I wanted to do something, I might. Not to say I didn't enjoy doing it. I did. I enjoyed many of the conversations. It just was, it's become a little too much. And so this is what I want to do. Now, back to why the title of the Commissioner card, March Village Elections. Every year in March or June or November, we have village elections. We have 15 villages in Onondaga County, and they all hold elections at different times. Most of the villages now, I believe it's 8 of them, or 7 of them. 7 or 8. I can't remember how many. But no, yeah, it's 7. No, 8. I'm sorry. 8 villages hold elections in November. There's been a big move towards that. In recent years, we saw the villages of Liverpool, Fayetteville, and Baldwinsville recently move to November. A few years back, we had East Syracuse, Tully, and Solvay move to November. And then we've always had Camillus in November. So maybe it's 7 that are in November now. But the other rest of the villages all are either split between March or June. In fact, there's only one village in June, and they're holding an election later this year in June, and that's North Syracuse. But what I want to talk about is the 4 villages holding elections this year in March of 2024. And those 4 villages are the village of Skaneateles, the village of Manlius, the village of Jordan, and the village of Fabius. All of those 4 are holding elections in the March election period. That March election period is March 18th. Yes, the day after St. Patty's Day. And they hold those elections. Now, when a village holds their election in November, the Board of Elections automatically runs that election. But when they hold them in March or June, the villages have a choice of whether having the Board of Elections run their election or their village clerk run their election. Of the 4 having elections this March, the Board of Elections runs 2 of them. Skaneateles, which is our first time running the Skaneateles election, and in Manlius, the village of Manlius, are both run by the Board of Election. However, the other 2 villages, Jordan and Fabius, those village elections are run by the village clerk. So today, in today's episode, I'm only going to be talking about Skaneateles and Manlius because that's the only thing that the Board of Elections runs. If you live in the village of Jordan or live in the village of Fabius and you want to know what's going on in your elections, you need to go to the village clerk, either their website or give them a call, because they're in charge of that. And we have no say over it. We can't impose our will on villages, but if the village voters decide to move an election to November, or the village themselves ask for help and want us to run an election, we always do so. The villages will, in March and June, they reimburse us our costs. So the Onondaga County taxpayers are not saddled with this election since it's optional to have them in March or June. However, if they are on the November election, the costs are 100% paid for since we're already holding an election in November. So that's the mechanics of it. So let's talk about the Skaneateles and Manlius village elections. Now, village elections are kind of an odd thing to begin with. Many villages run on what's called nonpartisan lines. That means they're not on the Democrat or Republican lines. This is actually more a choice of tradition rather than a choice of the voters themselves or even the candidates. But it is not emphatic. There is nothing in election law or in the village charters that say people who are in villages that are seen as people running on non-partisan lines that they can't run on a partisan line. And in fact, we've seen this in the past where the village of Fayetteville was seen as a nonpartisan village, and then the Democrats started running candidates in there and were successful. We saw the same thing in Liverpool, where the village of Liverpool was seen by the Democrats as non-partisan, but as the Republicans were running on the Republican line. And we've seen that in Elbridge, where they've run on the Republican line. We've seen it in Solvay, where they've run on Democratic and Republican clients. Oh, that's the 8th one. It was Elbridge that moved. That's right. That's the 8th one that moved in November. So, we've seen people run on partisan lines in Elbridge, in Solvay, in North Syracuse, in Fayetteville, in Liverpool. So 5 of the 15 villages have a strong tradition of running on the partisan lines, where the rest run on nonpartisan. But that doesn't mean that they always run on nonpartisan lines. Say the village of Tully and the village of East Syracuse have had candidates run on the major party line, even though they traditionally run in nonpartisan. And that's usually because it's easier to get on the ballot because there was caucusing instead of petitioning, and a candidate failed to get enough signatures to get their independent petition. So the party still had time to hold a caucus, and instead of having no candidate, they held a caucus and had a candidate. So even if the village traditionally has nonpartisan lines, a party can decide to run candidates in these villages, and it's up to the voters to decide whether they like that or not. So there's no law keeping someone from running on, or keeping them from not running on a Democrat or Republican line. But that being said, the 2 villages that we're managing this election, Manlius and Skaneateles, they only have candidates on a nonpartisan line. But not only that, they only have 1 set of candidates. Neither village has competition for their village offices. This is one of the reasons why I and many others are proponents for moving elections in November. They tend to have more time for running for office. If you run in the March election, you got to do petitions in December and January, and caucuses. In February is the latest you can hold a caucus. And, around that time, winter's here, it's harder to petition, harder to go door to door. But also, people aren't thinking about running for office. They're thinking about running for office in November. And it becomes, we see a lot more of these March elections, especially the March elections, have a lot less competition than a November election. That doesn't mean that the November elections always have competition. Nope. Again, we had a November election last year where not only did we not have competition, we had nobody on the ballot for the East Syracuse village justice. So there's a lot of problems out there, on villages and people not knowing about how to run for office or why to run for office. And villages are tiny to begin with, so there's less pool to draw from. So non-competition goes across all of the different election times, and there's different reasons for it. But in my opinion, it tends to be seen more in the March village elections because people don't know that they can run for office. But let's go over the candidates and the specific elections, because we are still holding election. Even though there's only 1 candidate for office, we're still holding election because a write-in option could emerge and win any of these races. So let's start with the village of Manlius. Village of Manlius, now when an election happens in March, the villages decide what their polling hours are, even if the Board of Elections runs the election. So in the village of Manlius, they have a full day of polling, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. They've always had that, whether the Board of Elections ran their elections or not. We started running their elections about 6-7 years ago, maybe even longer than that. So, but they've always had a 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. day. The offices that are up at the village of Manlius is mayor, justice, and 2 trustee positions. Running on the Citizens Party line, this is a line that many of the village offices have had in the village of Manlius. Hank Chapman is running for mayor. Marla Russ is running for justice. And for trustee, Janice Abdu-Rat, and Tom Paluski. Now, none of these positions have an opponent, only a write-in box. So if somebody wanted to run a write-in campaign, they could still do so and win and be elected to the office. No Democrat or Republican is running, although some of these people are enrolled in one of those two parties, I'm sure, if you look at their voter registration, but they're not declaring it on the candidacy. There have been Democrats who've run for Manlius before, unsuccessfully in recent years, but it has happened. So the Village of Manlius, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. at Manlius Village Hall, and the polls will be open all day. Now, when we go to Skaneateles, the polls for Skaneateles are only open from noon to 9. They're having an election for mayor and 2 trustee positions. The current Mary said it. The current mayor is running again for re-election, and the 2 trustee positions are Edward Evans and Joshua Kemp, and they're all running on the Citizens line as well. A lot of times Citizens line is a popular name when choosing an independent line. It's not an actual party. They don't have a party designation. They don't have. Neither of these people are related in the sense of political affinity. They just chose Citizen, and because they're the only people in that village choosing Citizens, they can have Citizens as their line. So again, there are write-in spots if anybody wanted to run a write-in campaign. Otherwise, the people choosing those offices will be the ones who serve. Now, Skaneateles Fire Department is where the polling place is on Election Day, and it's noon to 9. Now, neither one of these villages have early voting. We are 8 days out from the election, so early voting would be running now. Traditionally, villages that hold March and June elections do not have early voting. So, but they do have, by law, have to have early vote by mail. And this includes Jordan and Fabius, even though the Board of Elections doesn't run it. They have to run their own election and send out vote by mail ballots, whether it's early vote by mail, absentees, military, etc. So you can still request a ballot for either the Skaneateles or Manlius right from the Board of Elections. You can go to our website, onvote.net, and apply via the portal. If you are doing this, so you need to either choose the date range of when an election will be held, March 18th, or choose general election on the application. If you choose general election, that means any general election that happens in the time frame of this year, you would be eligible to get a ballot. Unless you signed up as a permanent absentee, then you would get a ballot no matter the election. So if you're applying general, or if you're applying date range, or you can come down to the Board of Elections and apply in person and get your ballot and vote them any day from 8:30 to 4:30 until Election Day. Now, we will mail out a ballot on Saturday if we get an application on Friday. So we'll put it in the mail on Friday night. That we're not open on Saturday. So if we get it on Friday, we will put it in the mail. We're not responsible for U.S. mail. We say 15 days before an election, an application has to be in to be guaranteed, but we will mail them out up until the Saturday or Friday before the election, depending on when the board is open. And so if you're still interested in getting a vote by mail, either early vote by mail, absentee temporary, or absentee permanent, time to sign up is on the website, onvote.net, or come down to the Board of Elections. It's probably too late for us to mail you an application, have you mail it back, and have us mail out a ballot. So it's getting a little too late for that. But if you have any questions, give us a call, 315-435-VOTE. Now, election night, we will be reporting the totals on our Facebook and Twitter feed. And then once the election is certified, it will go on onvote.net. We don't do unofficial results on our board page because we don't have the results caster that we have on election nights, because there's only a few villages and not the whole county, and it's very expensive to run that. So that's not something we do. We traditionally do our vote totals for election night reporting on Facebook and Twitter for village elections. And you hear my dogs going crazy because somebody happens to be walking by. I happen to be parked in my parking lot or in my driveway. I don't have a parking lot. But anyways, so sorry about that. And then finally, we will certify the election. We'll probably make pretty quick work of it. Hopefully there won't have to be a hand count, though. If there is a race within 10 votes, if there are write-ins and there's within 10 votes of the people who are not in, we will have to do a hand count. We expect to have this wrapped up by April 1st, but we have a little bit more time than that. I think we have 3 weeks by that, because remember, we have up until 7 days after an election for the absentee ballots to come in, so we can't certify for at least 7 to 10 days. So keep that in mind. That being said, these are all unopposed races, and I haven't heard of anybody running a writing campaign, but that doesn't mean anything. Writing campaigns do not have to be registered with the Board of Elections or anything like that. Literally, people can just show up and write somebody's name in. As long as they're eligible to take office, they can win that office. And for most villages, there's no residency required. So they can win an election without actually being able to serve if they're a registered voter in New York State, because they can move into the village to serve the election. So that's a lot of complication to me. But for the most part, we are not going to see a writing candidacy from somewhere outside of a village. That would probably happen from inside of a village, and we'll see what happens there. So that's March village elections. Tomorrow I'm actually going to be in Albany again. That's Tuesday, March 11th. I'm traveling to meet with some of the Ways and Means staff and Assembly member staffs. I met with a lot of the Senate people a week ago. I'm meeting with a lot of the Assembly people. Tomorrow we're arguing a bipartisan request for funding from the from New York State to local county boards of elections. And we're also talking about some various bits of election law that we're hoping to get changed. Again, another bipartisan thing with the hand count, altering the way we do that to make it more feasible and reasonable and still preserve the integrity of the hand count. We are requesting minimum for commissioners for being full-time, and also staffing at boards of elections. That's a Democratic caucus request. And 4-year terms, that's a Democratic caucus request. So when I go, I am the chair of the Democratic caucus, so I'm serving my caucus, but I have a heavy emphasis on the things that both the Republicans and Democrats support, especially when it comes to the budget requests. So, and I'm usually joined by a couple of commissioners when I go. So it's really, I'm not doing that much this year. The schedule doesn't allow for that. I probably won't go up again until May. I'll try to do a couple in May, maybe one in June. They're trying to get some bills over the line if time permits, and it seems reasonable to go on. So that's all. That's what's going on this week. We're working on we're training a lot of new people. We've had a lot of new staff come in, a lot of people leaving. I think we've had 5 openings on the Republican side. So there's a lot of new staff coming in. When it came, and that's not counting the deputy commissioner and the Republican commissioner. Everybody's coming in, they're working hard, getting people trained, working together as a team. Pretty excited about a lot of that. And, we're perfecting a lot of the things that we put into place over the last few years, including getting our new registration system really running at the way it should be, since we had to do that in the middle of last year because the old registration system went out of business. So we're really humming along there at the board, And you can see that we still have over 318,000 registered voters in Onondaga County. It's still a record. Though a lot of them are falling off because we're not getting a lot of new registrations right now, we're getting a lot of, or at least the new registrations we're getting a lot of change of addresses, changing of party. We're not getting a lot of brand new registrations, but the new ones that are coming in are being outpaced by the deaths and the moving out at this point. That's usually what happens in the spring, and it's in the fall where we add a lot of people. So we'll see how that goes. Even in odd years, by the way, we add a lot of people. So we'll see how that goes this year. So that's what we got going on at the Board of Elections. Later this week, my weekly wonk, I will be looking at the suburbs of Onondaga County. I did the Onondaga County overall registrations on Friday, and this Friday I'll be doing the suburbs of Onondaga County, a place where Democrats have made a lot of gains, and one of the reasons why Onondaga County has become so blue is that the suburbs have gone blue as well. Of course, the city of Syracuse overwhelmingly blue, but we'll be looking at all the towns in a collective manner. So check that out. Next week's Commissioner in the Car, on the 17th, we'll be publishing all of our polling places for the general election. So I'll be talking about any changes we made, why we made those changes, and what pre-clearance is when it comes to Onondaga County, and why some of those changes will be pending pre-clearance review with the Attorney General. We'll go into all of that next week. Of course, we'll also remind people about the village elections happening the next day. So that's all I got. Go to DustinZarni.com and like and subscribe. You can share this video for people to see. And all my content will be there, and any election news that is relevant will be there as well. Thank you very much, and enjoy your day. Bye-bye.